In the spirit of Halloween, paranormal or not, what is the scariest, creepiest or most unsettling experience of your life? When I was in high school, I went jogging in the morning in preparation for the upcoming football season. It was around 5:30 to 6 in August, and I was hoping around the outskirts of town and seen a pit bull about 30 yards up the street, but when it seen me it ran off. I continued to jog until I heard toenails hitting the street. I turned and seen a different dog running up behind me, and I stepped up to it and it turned and dipped behind a car as I heard a second set of nails coming from the other side of the street. I turned and did the same. It ended up being a pack of stray 5 dogs stalking me down this street. I stopped jogging and walked the street and puffed my chest up and screamed at each dog that charged me. It was terrifying how orchestrated and organized they were, coming in from different angles in succession of each other, waiting for one to make the strike so the other would have an opportune moment. None got to make contact with me. I kept my head on a swivel and got off that street. I've had really intense dreams all of my life, and that translated into really intense nightmares too. One of the things I learned at a young age is how to wake myself up by forcing my eyes open. If things get too bad in a dream, I can always pull myself out. One night when I was a kid, I had a nightmare where I was being stalked by a serial killer and was attacked. As usual, I forced my eyes open and myself awake, but unlike every other time, the dream didn't end. I was awake and conscious. I could see my room, but the sound and feel of being attacked stuck with me. I could hear skin ripping, feel his hands holding me down. I tried to scream, but could only wheeze hoarsely. I could barely move, but managed to bring one of my hands up to my face and bit down, trying to wake myself up with pain, but my hand was completely numb. I just bit down harder and harder, trying to wake myself up until the dream ended, feeling returned, and my mouth was full of my blood. That's probably the scariest moment of my life. Another one wasn't actually dream related, but I was asleep. I sorta half woke up in the middle of the night and was lying on my arm awkwardly, and it really hurt, so I rolled over and suddenly I felt a hand grab my throat. Instantly, I'm awake. It's pitch black and I'm too terrified to move. Hello? No answer. Please don't kill me. Still no answer. Very slowly I reach my hand up to the hand around my neck. It doesn't respond to my touch. I feel down the hand to the wrist and the forearm and the elbow, and find it bending back towards me. It was my arm. I had been lying on it for so long that it had fallen asleep and gone completely numb. When I rolled over, it went across my neck without me realizing it was me. A friend and I, let's say Gary, were playing Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy while getting ready for our annual sleepover at a friend's. This was grade 6 to 7. I lived in a tall townhouse with 3 floors. My room was on the 3rd floor. It was the middle of November, so we didn't have any windows or doors open. We were laying on the floor facing the TV with our backs to the door. Suddenly the door behind us slammed hard 5 to 8 times, and we didn't see it move. We only heard it as it happened so fast and quickly in succession. We both freaked out, grabbed our bags and ran to our friend's house. Nobody else was home, as we made sure of that prior to playing the game and yelling profanities and other things young boys do when playing games when their folks aren't around. It was the creepiest and weirdest thing to happen to me in that place. My mum had other experiences with noises and even thought she saw someone in the corner of her eye a few times. I no longer lived there, and Gary and I still get freaked out about it when we talk about it. My friend used to work security at a building in my downtown area, one of the largest in our area actually. I went to visit him one night as the building was for the most part empty, and he would just walk around or go to the roof for the view as he worked the overnight security. He lets me in the lobby and then gives me his pass key to get to the roof, and he goes to the bathroom. I hit the elevator and tap the roof button and lean back in wait. It was late and I was a little tired, but I remember the trip up not taking very long. I arrived sooner than I thought possible, as the building was very tall, and I immediately walked out of the elevator to a completely empty floor. The elevator shuts behind me and I can hear it passing back down the shaft towards the lobby. I am in complete darkness other than the moonlight coming from the perimeter windows of the massive floor. I'm thinking that there is absolutely no way this is the roof, but I begin looking around maybe for a deck and eventually come upon a large outdoor area. Except there wasn't a safety handrail or anything preventing you from walking straight off the edge. As I'm outside I look up and see only fog above me, but it looks like the building may continental higher. Just down across the street from the building and down a couple floors a man is standing in his window and staring back at me, slowly shaking his head. I peer over the edge and for a second, had the largest urge to jump. I'd never been suicidal or even thought in that way, but the urge to just step out and let go felt warm and inviting. I could almost feel myself beginning to fall asleep and let go just at the edge when I get a call on my cell phone from my friend saying he can't find me on the roof. So I double back and find the elevator, and as it arrives, the light from the elevator lights up the panel that indicates the floor I was on just now, showing the level 13. As I left the floor behind me and traveled to the roof with my friend, I could have sworn most buildings did not have a 13th floor, as it was bad luck. The rest of the night went normal, but for the life of me I couldn't bring up what had happened before, almost like it was impossible to talk about. A couple of months back I actually asked the front desk person about the 13th floor of the building in passing, and she said that the building did not have a 13th floor. After a shudder of disbelief I asked again and she said that there was an actual 13th floor, but the button had been taken out to arrive to that floor in all of the elevator, and that all of the staircase doors had been sealed ever since a young man broke in one night and made his way up to the 13th floor and jumped to his death. This was the reason that my buddy was actually hired to become the extra night security, as they were worried about this becoming a recurring thing. There was a girl I worked with that was super weird. Like randomly singing weird. She had some kind of infatuation with me, I guess because I drove her to work sometimes. She randomly quit and I forgot about her. About 2 months later, I start smelling something strange in my apartment. Then it gets worse, to the point it's unbearable. Shortly after, I get a knock on my front door. I open it up and it's a police officer. He tells me that someone died in the apartment above me and had been rotting for weeks. He wanted to ask me some questions obviously. Turns out it was that girl. She apparently moved in there in those 2 months. Even worse, they said she put me down as her referral and emergency contact. I had no idea. Even stranger was that I never told her where I lived. Stranger even was a couple weeks before this I had a situation where I woke up in the middle of the night. I was completely paralyzed and heard whispering. I felt like I was being held down. After researching it later, I figured it was just sleep paralysis, which I've never experienced. Now, I'm not sure it wasn't something related to her dying in the apartment above. Super weird. I'll still never forget that smell. On a bridge walking back from a movie night with a friend, we both turned round for no logical reason and saw a black outline of a figure on the bridge behind us. I personally had a strong urge to turn and look, not sure about the other guy, but he was spooked as I was because the figure vanished. I can only describe it as a shadow on a wall vanishing as a light goes out, except there was no wall, just an empty space. We were 18-ish. We had gone clubbing. I was staying at my friend's house for the night. Preface by saying she always told us her house was haunted by something that attacked only her. No one believed her. We thought it was her brother who was hurting her, but she'd never admit it. So she says I can have her room and she'll take the den. I'm just about to sleep and she comes in and says if anything bad happens to get out. But it shouldn't because I'm not her. She says it usually happens to her in her room. Well, fuck that, we're switching. So I get settled in the den and she goes back to her room. Pitch black. Settling in. Ready to fall asleep. Then all around the room is one loud noise. I can't describe it. A crash bang? Freaked out. I wait a minute, then turn on the light. I can't see anything at first. Then I notice Every picture of her in the room is either laying face down on the shelves or is leaning against the wall on the floor, below where they had been hanging. Pictures of everyone else were fine. I thought her or her brother were fucking with me. Nope. Both still sound asleep. I don't know what is was. Ghost or prank. But, now being totally sober, I went home and left a note. Never stayed there again. Another thing I just remembered is how shared trauma can affect what two people see. I had nightmares, well, and some daymares too, of some weird thing using my great uncle to come after me with a noose. I'd sometimes swear my great uncle was hanging in the hallway. He committed suicide by hanging, but he was great to me. What happened with my great uncle is that he ran out of money, so his younger brother offered an old shitty house that had only cold running water and an outhouse as a place to live. Something didn't feel right there. I used to cry when it was time to visit him, and I told my mom something was bad about that house. I had nightmares about it. I think I was just picking up on my great uncle's despair. He lived alone in the middle of nowhere, was in barely surviving mode, and didn't even have anything around him to quiet his mind. If he could have even just been moved to a city where there was people and a library, that may have helped. Either way, just bad feelings all around, and it eventually got to him too. Decades later, when drinking with my little sister, our conversation turned to our youth and I told her the dream. She claimed the same thing, except that rather than being after her, that it was after me. She said he'd hang in her closet and say he was going to hang me. One other weird thing is while playing with the cats by our barn, I suddenly had a bad feeling. I turned around, there was a rope in the window hanging in the shape of a noose. I freaked out and ran back to the house. Later I did investigate and then could see it was just a rope hanging in such a way to make it seem like a noose through the window, but from inside the barn, it was just a rope not wrapped and hanging correctly. We were more affected by his suicide than anyone knew, despite people trying to keep it from us.